They've helped a lot of organizations be able to work around this. And they sit with you, understand your workflows, map them out, and this is what I want to do. And part of the episodes that you're going to be able to see me work around is that how do I build an ontology for VAST? I want to be my first client. And then I want to use this, build upon it, develop an ecosystem, manage context. Why is this important? I'll start showing you. The moment I figured it out for VAST Carbon, much earlier, you're going to see me talk about this gentleman that I really like a lot, Charles Hoskinson. And some of the framework he's done by releasing this thing called Midnight. In my history, you can remember I used to like blockchain a lot. And I still believe the next future, one of these days, I'm going to do a whole rant on where I feel like the new world order is moving towards and why I feel like blockchain, digital currencies play a very important role, but sorry for another day. The idea around this is that imagine, and this is what I want to build in when I'm imagining. You have an ecosystem where you're allowing organizations, you're having VAST here, you're having Base here, you're having, I don't know, Safaricom here, and many other organizations. And you're trying to figure out, when I've done an ontology mapping here, on top of my data, these are the, you remember I mentioned the moment you start understanding how these things are working, this is the point at which you start figuring out what are the downstream derivative value additions that I can derive from working on this ecosystem. You can start realizing that there is a case to be made for data to be structured. And if you can be able to ensure privacy is done the right way, and this is the biggest part of the job, and you can ensure attribution is done the right way, if you understand an LLM architecture in terms of how do you map out what data was used to train what thing, I can build an economy out of this. Now value is starting to create where if I structure data the right way, because remember I made an argument that the data that we're using is what is being used to train these ecosystems. And yes, you'll be told that we don't use your data, we don't share, but if you work in this country, I think you understand these things. And if you've worked in the continent, these rules don't apply consistently. There's a lot of nuance in how data handling policies are done. And as an organization, those are the things that you're supposed to protect for. So you're going to get a point where these conversations I was talking about, self-hosting, becomes very important, number one. Number two, there's this thing called Agentic AI. And I'm going to dedicate an entire ecosystem around this, and I don't want to talk about it in principle. I want to show you how to build these things. You're going to see that there's a whole different value here. If you look at the cost of LLM tokens, it's been subject to what we call scaling laws. Scaling law is as simple as this. The more you increase compute, the more you increase performance around it. And I will spare you majority of the distance, but some of the scaling law frameworks have then gone about, there's this law that says there's a decrease. I don't know if it's Murphy's law, scaling law, I have forgotten the name, where the cost of LLM, just go do your research. I might not have the numbers at the tip of my fingerprint. Every year, the cost of serving LLMs have been decreasing tenfold. The cost of serving GPT 3.5 and back 2 years ago, and the cost of serving it now, significant drop, 10x. What they just end up doing is model capability keeps improving. And there's this thing called mixtures of experts. This is what the Chinese have become very good at doing, which is looking at the transformer architecture, which is on the paper attention is all you need. You can read about it and the capacity thing. This mixture of expert is within the transformer architecture. How do you play around with the model to ensure that you can get better performance with the same constraints? And they've gotten into a very interesting, this is a very slight detour, but indulge me. The Chinese have gotten into a very interesting strategic positioning for themselves, because they have tariffs blocking them from accessing the hardware part of things, which is compute, the chips themselves. And their ecosystem has not yet developed the right way, but they're building for the future. This concept I'm telling you, where you realize the constraints that you have right now, but you still are building for the future. China operates very weirdly. Every city handles very specific components. Anyways, I don't want to get into that detour. But the whole idea around it is the Chinese models found an innovative way of enhancing efficiencies within the model through design architecture tweaks. So this mixture of XPack architecture becomes a very important thing. Long context handling, there's all those things. DeepSeek. So I think it's in V4. If you look at this, the first version of DeepSeek became very big because it was the first time where using more constraints, they were able to deliver better capabilities with a fraction of the cost that these big models were working on. And it started transforming the whole discussions on open source architecture. And before I poteza you guys, I've explained all these things, And the idea around this was that open source models. Yes, thank you so much. I think you've seen a cut here. My camera went off. We're now back again. I'm almost done. So let me finalize on this. And I think I was talking about open models and how the architecture and the innovation around DeepSeek became very significant for us. So again, just to make sure that I had not forgotten to record my screen, it is up and running. So DeepSeek version 4 is one I was explaining in terms of modern architecture and the cost of running these things. And I was trying to explain the opportunity I'm seeing ahead on where organizations such as ourselves and many of our other sister companies or Sabai or any other company, for argument's sake, there's an opportunity where this data structuring and putting an ontology map becomes very important. Why? Because, as I was explaining, there's a whole concept around how you maintain privacy, attribution, LLMs, etc. And if it done the right way, there's an entire economy, in my opinion, that can be designed around allowing organizations to share insights across each other, or it's what they call an agentic economy. Why am I borrowing from this? This was a whole detour I was trying to explain on the innovation around Chinese models. So the idea around it is, I was talking about I looked at a company. These are the ones that I have actually looked into. These guys, Salesforce. There was a time there was an AI apocalypse. I don't want to call it for something AI Monday. I've forgotten the day where majority of these stocks like ClickUp, Monday, Salesforce, etc. significantly went down because the market priced in that AI has come for their lunch. So their value went all the way down as Salesforce. And they had to pivot as any other business would have to do when adopting AI and figured out a way of doing it. And now they have an AI agent on demand. And the value the most Salesforce managed to experience is that they have a lot of data across their different clients that you can draw insights from and sell those insights as a derivative marketplace. So it's in essence taking data, creating value out of it and creating a marketplace. I think they have an agentic way where they charge you around $2 per engagement or $0.2. There's a whole business model. They have forgotten numbers, but I'm already seeing all this happening. There is XO2 protocol by Coinbase and Google. ChatGPT has started allowing you to make orders. I think my charge is almost done. Make orders online or even connect your card, etc. The payment rail that supports this entire ecosystem is what XO2 are trying to build. And there are many other places where you're going to see that. And this is my premise. In a world where you've seen how there's even a chip company that is fighting with NVIDIA. I think it's Ask Tommy or Ask Jimmy or something, which is they take the entire transformer architecture and print it on top of a chip model so that they ensure that normally the normal architecture is supported in terms of it serves 15 to 20 tokens, I think, per second per single chip. These ones, I think, can serve up to 15K tokens per second just by overlaying the architecture around it. What am I saying? Innovation is being built on top of these things. And we might not be building innovation like as Jimmy, or I forget the name, but there's something like that where they create an architecture on a chip. We might not be doing innovation of that nature, but I believe there's an entire innovation around the agentic marketplace. And in the subsequent episodes, I will be showing you what I'm trying to build in public around this. The premise is not 100% true, but I believe that there can be an entire ecosystem as to how you allow value to thrive by, I had earlier mentioned in DEPA. I have talked about a couple of these things, and I think there will be an episode so that I will spare this for that episode to explain how I am seeing opportunities being created out of this entire ecosystem and how value can then come back to organizations like myself for sharing data, similar to how Salesforce is doing this entire ecosystem. So there's something I'm trying to work around in terms of that. And then secondly, when you're looking at these deployments, you can ask the question on what has made these models become more efficient. Because remember, I was mentioning that law where year on year, the cost of running individual AI models is going down 10x. However, with agentic workflows done, all these changes. Why? You're getting to a point where your normal interactions, like I had highly explained, involves having a chat interface. We're talking to ChatGPT, it's coming back to you, it's telling you a couple of things. But when you're getting agentic ecosystems, you're building a harness around it and you're coordinating. And I will explain how agentic workflows are working. But in essence, you're doing a lot more workflows. And if it gets to a point where just to pull call, to structure your ecosystem, build up your entire agentic workflow, and look at how N10 does it, Code have done it. Almost everyone is moving into the agentic ecosystem. Your token usage balloons. So if you're experiencing a case where your token on cost at a model level has gone down, but your token usage per unit of a query has gone up because you're building up an agentic ecosystem, you're seeing where if you don't have the discipline to structure your entire ecosystem the right way, where things are working out the right way, then you're having a situation where, yes, you're experiencing model decline, which is in the purview of where these frontier labs are working on. But if you don't have the structure or the operational discipline of running your AI the right way, and I went into detail to explain where context becomes important. And if you're not able to almost become like, it's just not, it's just not the data by itself, it's the structure behind it, the ontology we talked about. If you don't have the discipline of how to manage your token usage and context usage, then your AI bill explodes. I was just down in Cape Town a few weeks ago, and I met a person who was spending around $86,000 a month on AI tokens just to run a client workflow where he's built agentic teams. So he has a finance person, he has a researcher who does specific areas of working, and his job is to orchestrate all those AI employees. I will speak a lot about it, but if not anything, then the slogan is you almost get to a point where if you don't have that as a discipline, and if the model cost is going to zero, as I earlier alluded to, where the cost of competence is almost increasing, becoming that much cheap, where you're having a $20 model be able to build out ecosystems for you. The question then becomes, how do you position yourself on this ecosystem?